Glenn, thank you very much for running that session on leveraging email marketing as a service for your agency. Um, there were some questions that were submitted in advance, and we've got some questions that we pre-canned as well. It'd be really good to pick your brains about them. And I wanted to start off with the thorny issue of money and pricing specifically for email marketing. Could you talk us through your approach and kind of structures or pricing structures that you use?
So as I mentioned before we got cut off, I was talking about my actual pricing that we do. And I think, when you are pricing, people are going to be thinking about what it means to them, like what they're going to get for that money, right? And so I prefer to move to retainers, because if I can move to a retainer, that means that, hey, I've got consistent work for my business, but also I feel I can offer better value and a better price to my client. So how I might do that is, say my hourly rate is $160, then I might, on a retainer, I can say, hey, on retainer, we charge $135 and give people a bit of a discount for being on retainer. So when I'm charging for individual emails, how we work that is we have let's call it 3 different prices, because to me there's 3 different emails. There's a newsletter, which has really long, which I don't recommend people send as often these days, because we can, by the way, scroll a few times on our phones. So think about length. But newsletters, we charge $1,500 to send those. So that is design, that's build it, that's test it, that's gathering all the content, helping them with their content to do that, and then sending out that first email, resending it as well. So $1,500 for that. It's quite a big chunk of work there. And you're probably looking at 10, 12 hours work maybe, right? Somewhere in there. It could be less if you're quick. That's including client conversations. And then if the news flyer, we might charge $800 for that. It's shorter, it's just 5 or 6 products, not as many stories. Could just be linking through to the website. And then say $550 for a sales flyer, which is a single call to action. So single product, single offer, So those prices, if I compare them against other pricing I see out there, for example, Mail Ninja, pay as you go, they're mostly sales flyers. So if you start looking around, you can see what people are charging and can see where you can place yourself against those people. The thing is though, like you will have an hourly rate, you'll have a shop rate. If you haven't got a shop rate, you need to go and work out what it is now. Shop rate's obviously how you make money. But with your shop rate, you can kind of think about, okay, an email takes us, say, 2 hours to build and test an email. And then it's like dealing with the client might be another hour. Like to build an email, say a newsflyer is about 5 hours work. So that's kind of how we get our pricing as well, right? Now, moving to retainers, I like that idea of giving people some a discount on the hours, because they have actually they're partnering with you. They're basically helping, they're paying you money. And your goal in that is to obviously help them send more emails and make more money for them. So, but still, you would work out how you would price your retainer would be on how many emails you're going to send for them per month. So that's how I do it. I might give them a couple free a year. And look, the fact is that there's generally 4-5 week months of the year that kind of run over 5 months. So how I look at it is I amortize that all out. And if they're not sending at Christmas as many, well, I've kind of taken that into account because there's some 5 week months. So that's how I work out my retainers and my pricing. Anything else? Like any other questions there, Ewan?
No, that's really interesting. So the kind of per email cost. So I just had a quick kind of workout in terms of British pounds and New Zealand dollars. So it works out around about 50p to 50 pence to a New Zealand dollar a minute. So you mentioned it's about 1,500 New Zealand dollars for a newsletter. So it's about £750 over here for the single kind of newsletter build and send, which it is interesting because I'm wondering how many people buy it on that basis with you. Do they, is that how you approach the sell, where you say, well, look, let me take care of your email for you, that'll be $1,500, £750, and let's go from there? Or is that more of a kind of tactic that you use to really push the retained model?
So that is always the first email. It would never be one that is ongoing, because like you would actually scale that down. So the first email would be $1,500, and then from then on it might be $800. But that initial setup, getting it into MailChimp, testing it, all that kind of thing. So that first initial cost, and then it will go to say 800, 550, and then 300. So we drop it down once we start going. But getting those first ones, so those are the costs they'll pay. And you can sell that in as a setup. You can sell that in as there's account management going on there. You're setting up a marketing plan for them, a content calendar. There's a bit of stuff going on there in those first emails. But yes, I do. I send it, I use it as a basis to go, hey, actually, maybe we should have a look at a retainer because here's the pricing that we can do there. And it's a good look. Pricing is such a big conversation because, you might have costs that I don't have, right? And so, you're charging more. I'm probably a bit more relaxed about my hourly rate these days because I don't, because thanks to COVID, we're all distributed now. But you have to be careful because even if you're distributed, the fact is that you've got a huge amount of knowledge that you can use that you've spent 20 years building. It's still valuable, right? So yeah, pricing, that's how we do it. We have the one-off setup fees. And look, if someone comes to us, Ewan, and it's their only email that they're sending, they're not on retainer, and it's kind of a hassle every time, I charge them those top rack rates because we're doing the same thing every single time. Once they start, like they go, oh, actually, can I do a month? Can I do that monthly? Then we'll drop it down, and we'll drop it down to the next tier because we're working with them. We know how to get their content over. So yeah, have a setup price, an ongoing price, make sure you show them both, and then say, here's what we can do on a retainer. And on that retainer, you give them a bit of a discount because they're going to commit to you for 3, 6, 12 months, That
makes a lot of sense. And can you talk us through your tactics and your approach when you're selling in email marketing services, particularly if you've got a client who is doing it themselves, maybe they have a play around with MailChimp or whatever it might be. How do you sell in and try and win that type of work?
So the majority of our clients come to us for 2 reasons, really. One, they've run out of time to do it themselves. So they actually know. So you'll be in a conversation with them and they're like, I'm doing email marketing, but I know it could do it better. That's the conversation you want to be having, right? And you can bring that up. Because you can say, hey, I signed up for your email and I can see that you only sent, you're only sending one a week and you sent this one on Monday and that one on, you know what I mean? And it's very inconsistent. And you can talk them through, hey, here's what consistency can look like for you. So that's the kind of thing. Like I know that if you sent an email a week, you are going to have far better results. And so, yeah, I talk about, always sign up, see what they're sending. They come to us because they've run out of time. They want to do it better. And so that's the general conversations that we're having. So if you're selling it in and you've got other work from them, you might just, sign up for their newsletter, have a look and just ask them, hey, how's your email marketing going? Like, I signed up, didn't get a welcome email. You know, can we have a discussion about your email marketing? I've got some ideas about how you could maximize your customer database, how you could align your email marketing with your business objectives, and we could really grow your business here. And I think talking about maximizing customer lifetime value, so getting the most money from your clients and talking, or your customers, and talking about building that business into a saleable thing. Like, hey, have you thought about when you sell your business, what your customer database is going to be like? Like, have you got one? And so just, I think, like, looking at where the person is, where their business is, and if they're, and you can just ask them the question. I signed up, I didn't get a welcome email. Look for those inconsistencies. Look for a lack of resends. Look for, terrible subject lines. Like, look for the HTML emails being horrible, the images the wrong size. Like, there's so much you can tell when you sign up for your clients' emails, right? The first one comes to you and you're just like, I can help you with that. I've got some ideas. Hey, look, you can say it ended up in my spam. That's a great conversation starter. Did you know that your email went to spam? Like, you're in. Really? Because they won't know, by the way. They won't have a clue. And so, I think in that, if there's a couple of good points there to start with.
Definitely. I think a lot of the members of the AC, they're offering existing services. It might be website design, it might be, social media, marketing, PPC, whatever it might be. And to offer email as an additional kind of service, they've already got a bit of insight into the business. So as you say, it's looking at, they should have some insight already as to what the business objectives are, what the key, commercial objectives might be for the year coming, or the longer term in terms of, are they looking to exit and things like this. But no, such a good point, and super helpful as well. And it's interesting you brought up that point where people say, I'm doing email now, I want to do it better, but I don't have the skills or the time or whatever it might be. Just kind of pull that back a bit. When you're, because it's you and a relatively small team at Spike. What are the challenges? What are the key challenges when it comes to client management that you and the team faces when you're running emails for a bunch of clients?
Oh, that's a really good question. So we work in a specific way, Ewan, where we have all of our clients have marketing calendars, content calendars, and we actually I have weekly meetings with pretty much all of my clients, which is hard to scale, but that's my job, right? So account management and getting ideas. So what we do there is we make sure those content calendars are filled out, because we have set deadlines. So in the presentation, I talked about getting consistency first. So we know that there's an email going out on Monday at 5 p.m., Wednesday at 10 a.m., Saturday, like, we know when all of those are. So we work backwards a couple of days. And, you give yourself as long as possible. Some people might need a week to sort themselves out. We can turn emails around in 2 hours, but we have very, I think, good processes where we've sold the person in on, you need to have this content calendar filled in by this date, because we're going to send you a test on this date. And it's, it's a day or so before when the email needs to go out. So that's how we manage lots and lots of clients, is that they all have marketing calendars. They all have times and dates where they're sending emails, and we work backwards from there to get all our timings. And we can just, we've been doing that for a long time now. And so we're very efficient at testing, like I mentioned, get someone else to test it. So the person who builds it, someone else tests it, right? So they can then get on to building the next email. The other key there is finding developers who can build emails really, really quickly. Like drag and drop is all well and good, but if you want an email looking the best, and this is where digital agencies have got like these unique skills, is that we can build things, right? And that's where, like, if you see a poorly formatted email, you can go, hey, we can help you with that. Like that's like I said, good conversation starter. When do you start sending that email? And you're right, if they've got insight, they know that they're doing it last minute. So to deal with lots of clients, you just give yourself a little bit more runway. You say our email is going here, and you just work backwards. And whatever time works for them, Ewan, because for some of our bigger clients, it's a week, but they're a year out with their marketing calendar, right? So a week, all done, scheduled, on to the next thing. And giving yourself that breathing space means that if something comes up, like a competitor does something, you've actually got some time to react to that. So yeah, that's our process is start at that deadline of when it's scheduled to go, and then work backwards from there in a time frame that suits each client. We try and bring them around to our way of thinking, which is like 3 days.
It sounds like being like super organized. Number one, do you use any tools, to help with that kind of organization? And effectively, there's almost like a stack of mini projects, isn't it? Every send is like a project in itself with the key milestones within each. Have we got the copy? Have we got the images? Have we done the proof? Have we done the link check? So each one of these runners independent little projects almost. What tools do you use at Spike?
So we use Asana. And then we use Slack, and then we have a timing one that we use as well. And obviously we use Google Docs. So every client has like a folder in Google Docs, and it has all their content. So they're just putting content into there. We have the odd client who has Dropbox. We try and move them to Google Docs if we can. Just because like then everything is in the same place. And that is actually one thing that agencies can really, really help their clients become more efficient, is have one place where all their stuff is, So if you have a client content folder, and then images, and then you have design, like you just have everything put into a folder, and you help them organize it, because you just say, here's how we work. And then you put it into these folders, suddenly you've actually, like, you could have improved your client's efficiency by 50 or 100%, because they've just got it scattered all around the place, right? They've got it scattered around different people. You tie it into one place where everybody is working from. Man, the efficiencies you get from that, huge.
There's also a bit of sorry to interrupt, Ben. I was just going to say there's also a bit of setting client expectations as well.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of, and certainly in terms of lots of sales processes that we've been involved in, that you sell them the dream, and then the reality is we need 200 words of copy in 3 days, or, we need these high-res images and, commas. Whereas if you've got this workflow laid out for them and you're helping them to settle into the workflow as well, and from a CX perspective, that's going to be a big win, right?
Yeah, it is. And, we will do basically anything in some respects because we've got quite a lot of experience. So we'll suggest subject lines, like, even if they're going to write themselves, we'll suggest some. We'll look at the grammar and the copy. Like, we write copy for a lot of our clients. Like, we write the intros. And why we do that is not, even though it is a service that we offer, it just gives the client something to work from, to even say no to. Like, don't be afraid to give your clients something they're going to say no to, because the fact is that they need to start from somewhere. So even if they say no, it doesn't really matter. Do you know what I mean? Like, just take the hit and go, and just go, yeah, but, and then in the back of your mind, you've got this little thing like, hey, we've got them to get their content to us,
It's such a good point. It's that whole kind of, you've got a starting point, and then you say, what do you like and what do you not like, rather than having this kind of weird, philosophical theoretical kind of vision of what an email could look like. I think it's a good point. And it just means you get to the point a little bit faster. And one of the questions that we had submitted to us a bit earlier on was about the actual structure of emails. Forgive me for jumping around a little bit here, Ben, but it was Andy from Made It Web. He was asking about whether or not we should provide all the desired content as part of the email, or instead provide a summary and then link back to your website for the rest of that content. And I wonder if you kind of touched on this briefly when you said about a massive, gripping long newsletter is the ideal way to go. But what are your thoughts on that? And is there kind of like is there a magic formula that you use when it comes to content and the mix of content within an email?
So that's a really good point, and it comes down to the clientele. So let's say something close to Peter's heart, accountants, very wordy, can be quite verbose. However, there are certain things that they need to communicate in those emails, and if they can just keep that as succinct as possible, like just a couple of hundred words, you keep that in the email. However, if it's something bigger, then you're sending them off to the website. You would never have a full blog post in an email, and if that's the type of newsletter we're talking about, you would always send them back. And here's a secret to email that we didn't talk about, but email is fantastic for SEO, right? So you want people going back to your website about certain stories, because it's great for SEO, because as you're building your list, there's more people going to your website, to that blog story, to that blog post, that article about what you want to be known for. So great for it, right? And look, that's a really good question. And because it's a really good question, because it is something we get asked a lot. And to me, it comes down to, can you say the thing in a couple of hundred words? And that might be, here's something that's going on. Here's something you need to know now. Contact us to find out more, or whatever your call to action is there. And then if it's like, hey, here's a new article that we've written about X, you link that off. So you have a headline, first couple of paragraphs, maybe some bullet points about what it's about, boom, off to your website, collecting some SEO on the way through. We know we all need Google juice. And that's how I organize content in an email. And it's actually how we design emails as well. We look at what people want to send, excuse me, and what's important, lay it out like that. You just want some short little blocks and just sending people off to the website when they can read it later. So that's how we organize it.
So it's so interesting, because we talked a little bit in the call, or we had a few questions in the call about mobile first. And I think, at the minute, how people's consumption habits of emails is really interesting. One of the points that was made in the chat was, now that we're in lockdown and people are working remote, have you seen much of an impact on the mix of devices that people are opening emails with? Somebody, one of the people on the chat then said they've definitely seen a bit of a tilt more towards desktops. What would you say your thoughts are around that? I mean, obviously you sound a very, very much kind of mobile person. I'll be honest with you, I'm sitting in the same school as you do. But are there any kind of mitigations that agency owners maybe need to think about, or what do they need to keep an eye on?
So that's a really interesting point. I mean, we deal a lot with retail, so for us it's always mobile first, right? Like really, really, and it's growing very, very quickly. So how people read email when they think about it is they always scan on their mobile, might open it up, and then read it on their desktop later, or on their laptop later, if they're interested. So what we're seeing is that is still the case. So we're still seeing this uptake in mobile. And I think with mobile, if you think about how many times you can scroll, it's probably 2 or 3. You're going to look down 2 or 3, right? And then you're going to, you're on to the next thing, or you might click through. So and it all depends on what time of the day and where you're at. So for that, I believe desktop is still, where most people read business emails, especially. Marketing emails, we just scan through and see what's interesting to us. So I think it really depends on knowing your audience. I read some emails that are quite wordy from people like Mark Manson, because he's sending email subscriber stuff, right? So he'll have a full article in there that I'll read, but you really have to know your audience. But yeah, still, it's mobile first. The uptake on that is still huge, and it will continue to grow. But people don't really read emails on their mobile. They just save them to read them later on their desktops. So that's what we see. Initial burst on mobile, and then later the desktop starts to pick up as people head into work. I think though it's a different culture. Like when you used to travel by train, like once upon a time when we were allowed to do that, people would be reading on their mobiles, right, on the train. So, but obviously, like we're not seeing that anymore. So we're seeing skimming, and then we're seeing the uptake. So those longer times spent on mobile in some countries where there's lockdown, like during lockdowns, that does definitely drop down. Absolutely.
Yes, it is really, really interesting. I remember when I was working in publishing, the initial kind of impact, like the year of mobile, like spanned about 4 years or something like that. But we are definitely seeing the implications of technology getting smaller and smaller in your pocket, and the impact on user behaviors and consumption behaviors, and as you say, getting so granular as to what is the purpose of your communication of your email, and at what time you're sending it, what device is being read on, and what is the next step that you want the user to take. All these considerations that agency owners need to take.
Yeah.
We've got another question.
Ewan, can I just interrupt there? Sorry. There's one thing, like there's a really simple way to know. You just go and have a look at your reporting. And you go and have a look at a heat map of your email, and you see where people are clicking. And that's if they're not clicking past a certain point, cut your email off, right? That is a very simple way. And so, if they're reading on mobile and they're not reading the stories at the bottom, your email's too long, shorten it up. So testing, just test, go into your reporting, have a look. Some tools like platforms have heat maps, and you can actually see where people are reading and where they're clicking, and that is going to give you a huge amount of information on the design and layout and where your email is being read.
Again, from somebody who's quite lazy, why spend hours carving and refining these wonderful words if nobody's going to read them? If you can get your job done in the first kind of above the fold of your email, why bother going further down? And
yes.
there's a couple more questions here around building your email list as well. And there was David from NB Communications who's asking about should we manually add prospects to our agency's own email list after they contact us directly or via other channels. I mean, you touched on it briefly with some of the data capture stuff that you covered in your talk, but how else can agency owners either build out their own lists or indeed lists for their clients?
Okay, so lists for their own agencies. I've actually gone back to my roots. So this year, I've decided that I'm going to go back to how I started collecting email addresses and everything for my own business. So this is quite close to me. When I first started my business in 2004, when I went out on my own, I was at a time in my life where things were a bit shaky, and I felt I needed some more discipline in my life, and I was starting a business. So here's what I did. I started writing a Monday motivator, and that Monday motivator was to kickstart my thinking, their thinking, and it was something different than just sending about email marketing. So what I would say to people is, I'd meet them and I'd say, hey, do you mind if I keep in touch with my Monday motivator? it's every Monday, leaves my desk at 9 a.m. and it's just something just to kickstart your thinking. Yeah, I'd love that, Glenn. Great. I've got their permission. I can add them to my list, right? Now, when I add them to my list, these days, I've got a bit of a welcome series that will say, hey, thanks for adding to my list. In fact, you could even personalize that, because you could have a segment of people that you met. You could tag them as, I met this person at an event. So, you've asked them, here's how I'm going to, do you mind if I keep in touch with you? Get that permission. And then you might have a personalized follow-up based on where you met them. So the thing is, though, is that a weekly email is a great way to stay top of mind, right? And I've got a lot of clients out of that over the years, because I'm not sending them. Yes, I'm going to get back to them about their email marketing, but in the meantime, I'm actually sending them something useful, something that is near and dear to me, which is about becoming better every day. And so it's the things that I'm thinking about. And look, I said a couple of things there. I never missed a Monday for over 10 years. So there's like 600 odd emails, right? Like, that's a lot of content that then got placed on a blog. So, it's just, but it just shows another dimension to you, right? It's not, hey, we're not just here about business. We're real people. We do some cool stuff on the weekend. And have a think about that. It's a quick way to stay top of mind with your prospects. Like, definitely start looking at a welcome series, what else you could add into that as you onboard them. Things you want to tell them about. You can have all of that in there. So that's how I deal with prospects now. And I've gone back to doing that. And I've got quite a big list there. So that's great, right? And then the other one is building lists for clients. Like in the talk, I had all those different ways of collecting emails that we did from a field days. So we had the pads, the printed pads. We had clipboards. We had like iPads. When it comes to collecting emails, every point of contact with your business is a marketing opportunity and an opportunity to collect an email address. And the simplest way, if it's on the phone or via email, is, hey, we do X. We send a monthly newsletter. We do this. Is this have you got an email address we can send that to? Like, if they're on the phone, or what's your best email address to send that to? People generally say yes, because you're not just marketing to them, right? You're actually sending them something cool, something useful, something that could even help them grow their business. So, for my clients, communication is different to what prospects are, right? Because prospects, it's just staying top of mind, really. Clients, you're sending them something useful to grow their business. That's how I think about it. And if it's growing email lists, there is a huge amount of information about how to do that, but it's very simple. If you're in person, you teach your client how to use the MailChimp app, for example, straight in, you're getting permission straight away. You can use PPC to grow lists. You can use Facebook lead ads to grow lists. You can use co-registration to grow lists. Huge amount of things, and it's just working out what works best for your client and then just putting more money into that. Whichever one is working best, just pour fuel on that, right? That's how I look at it.
I like it a lot. It is interesting. I think it's that authenticity bit, I think, isn't it? If you're having these interactions with people, if you're on a sales call, if you're on an event, if you're in a networking meeting, I guess there are considerations to make around this whole remote digital bit that we have now. But even on a Zoom call, if you're having an initial kind of like chemistry test or a fact find or whatever it might be, even if it doesn't work out, say, look, we do this Monday morning motivations email, loads of people subscribe, get really good feedback on it. It's just like really interesting stuff that we come across in the world of accountancy or whatever. All right, to send it to you. What's the best email address? That conversation. Maybe I'm just thinking in my head, you could add things to the bottom of your own email as a footer to your Gmail client. We do this email every now and then. If you want to sign up, just click
Exactly.
something like that. So just keep on kind of working that through. I wonder, it sounds really simple, and something that you could do straight away. But then if we were to do a quick show of hands, if we were still on, I mean, how many people do it? Probably not very many. So it is one of those things. I've got one more question. Well, it's actually two questions that are kind of combined here, but I'd be really interested to know, what's been, the most powerful lever for growth for Spike for your kind of email agency. What have there been any kind of tactics or methods or changes in strategy that you've implemented that's had a really big impact in terms of your own business? And then if you can somehow kind of segue your answer into what you would do for a AC member if they brought you in on a contract, what would you try and do within the first 90 days? That would be lovely.
Okay. Oh, that's a good question. So for our, I suppose on that, so two parts there, obviously. So the first part, if we're looking at, hang on. So, just go through that first part again for me, so I'm really, really clear. I've got the second part, which is like what we would do for an AC member in their first 90 days. So I'll answer that first, and then we can come back to that first. I just want to get really clear on that. So, the first thing that we do is always do an audit. And the reason we do an audit is because then we know where we stand, right? And on the talk, I speak about consistency all the time. Consistency, trust, loyalty, bars and barbecues, where people are talking about that word of mouth marketing, right? And so that you have to start with an audit and see where people are at. And that's very simple. Like you can just go back. We sometimes go back 12 months. It really depends on how many emails people have sent. On how far we go back generally. And what we're looking for there is we're looking for how often they send, what their templates look like, what offers they're sending, what worked, what didn't work. We're looking for opportunities to help them out, right? So in that first 90 days, we know any idea that we're coming to them with is not only aligned with their business objectives, because I think like ideas outside what the person's business objectives are kind of useless, right? That's why I talk about email with purpose, because if we're aligning everything with their business objectives, then when I come to you with an idea, it's helping you along that path, right? It's not like some random thing out the side. So that's why I talk about email with purpose a lot. So first 90 days, you've done an audit, you've seen the opportunities, you've presented those. And then you've gone, okay, which one are we going to pick off first? And then it might be, we want to update our email template. Great, let's do that. That's going to take a week. And it is going to take a week, right? But for some clients, it might be like, hey, can you just send our emails for us? And so you go, okay, cool. I'm going to start. Here's the opportunities we've seen in the audit. You might do a briefer audit. We're just going to start sending your emails. Cool. Where's your marketing calendar? And you're having those conversations about how you fit in with that, right? And then you just go. And then in those first 90 days, you're going, okay, so now we've first month sent some emails. Here's the report. Here's what happened. Remember those opportunities we talked about. Which one do we want to tick off now? Okay, so we want to tick off email template, or we want to tick off posting on the blog, or we want to go, we want to start growing the list now. Great. Okay, let's run a competition. And so that first 90 days, you're just looking to get the consistency in place. You're looking to make sure that you've got those, you're setting some benchmarks that you can then grow from. Because, and the levers that you're pulling there, to me, are frequency. A lot of people don't send enough emails. Like you can send way more emails than you thought. When I started sending a weekly Monday motivator, people thought you couldn't send a weekly email. So I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to. And then I decided to send a daily email, a mini motivator, which was just a quote. This is 16 years ago, right? This wasn't heard of. Like people are like, oh, I can't do that. And what amazes me today is we're still having those meetings. So sometimes in that first 90 days, you're actually just getting your client's head around what the possibilities there are, with their customer database, where It's like you could talk to these people far more often, get far more money. Oh, but I don't want to annoy them. Well, don't send them rubbish. Send them good stuff. Send them good offers, send them good information, useful information, and they'll love you. And they'll be one of the emails that they open every week. So, first 90 days for that kind of thing. But so you're talking about, what was that first part of your question? I feel like I didn't quite nail it.
No, the first part was, was there, in your experience of running and growing Spike and the success that you've had with the agency, were there any kind of transformative moments in your running of the agency, decisions that you made, or tactics that you adopted, or maybe even strategies that you changed, Glenn? What do you think has been the biggest kind of lever for growth for Spike as a business?
Okay, so we're in a different phase, and I'm actually going back to growth again now, because we've gone up and then we've kind of come down. Now, how we went up is I just focused on an industry. That has been the big, and we just became really, really good at it, and I just would go and offer the same thing to other real estate. So just a quick story, like my first client was a real estate agency, and each agent paid us $20 a week to send a weekly email for them. It was just nothing. But from there, thanks to Jill McClatchy from, I'll always remember that lady. Like I was basically on the bones of my butt because of what had happened for the few years that I was doing email marketing with someone else. And that situation I was in, I had 4 weeks to get a new client. Before basically I couldn't pay my rent. So I went out there and I hit it, and I just chose real estate, because when I saw email marketing, Ewan, here is a way where one person can stay in contact with hundreds, if not thousands of people, stay top of mind with them. And it just changed my life. Like, it was just like, wow, this is an amazing technology. And it allowed you to do the day-to-day thing. So at the time, for me, real estate was a big thing, because in real estate, there's 2 things to do: list and sell. And all this other stuff goes around it. So if you can stay top of mind, you, by sending out a weekly property thing, or, here's my listing of the week, you just, it's just one less thing, but you're top of mind because those people are looking. And when they're not looking, you will say, when they've bought, we would then move them off to a monthly or a quarterly property marketing update, right? So acknowledging that they're not in the market anymore and moving them off. So, that, and then from there, I got into retail, and I just went hard out on retail. And, I spent 10 years with the biggest retail group in this country. I built a very big team, and it was great. And then there's some changes that happened. And so, I went back to, okay, what do I want to focus on now? As I said in the call, I believe that SMEs are the backbone of any economy. And I'm going back to that. So actually what I'm focusing on right now is email marketing for accountants, which is quite fortuitous with Peter's company. But, because I think that accountants are in a changing world, and they need to stay relevant. And so that's where I'm focusing right now. So that's how I grow my business, is I always choose a industry and I just go for it. And the thing is, like, on the way there, you're always going to pick up other clients. And, you can either take those or say no to them, right? And so, but that's how I've grown my business. That's how I'm going to grow it through the next stage. And by choosing a focus and choosing an industry and getting to really know that industry and becoming that expert, people will come to you, because at the end of the day, like, they want to talk to the best, and hey, they might not always go with you straight away, I've had clients take 9 years to get to me. And so, I have this saying, the longer I stay in business, the longer I stay in business. And so if you're known, for something like that, I think you're going to grow your business. And look, there's so much going on out there these days. There's so much information. I feel that if you can become an industry expert and just read all that stuff about that, put out content about that industry, I don't know, you're just making your life easier. I think you're easing your mental load, and yeah, you'll just become better. And in this day and age, with what's going on, I think we need to lighten our mental loads and just get really good at something, right? And yeah, this year I'm choosing accountants. Next year, I don't know, it might still be accountants. I mean, I ran real estate for 14 years. I had real estate companies. So long time, right? You can grow a really good business just in one industry, really. And then as retail came through. So there you go.
We do a lot of talk about niche, and the Wow company do a report called the Bench Press, which is like a big kind of survey and kind of loads and loads of stats and benchmarking that comes in, and it bears out in the numbers. Agencies that specialize, that niche, that double down in a particular sector are able to charge disproportionately more for their services than a generalist agency. It just bears out in the numbers. So if you want to make more money, it is a case of finding your niche. Glenn, I'm gonna wrap it up there.
Thank you.
That's been so good. I really enjoyed that. That was lovely. Really enjoyed that chat. That was really good, and I think it'd be really useful as well to our members.